All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. I have a special guest with us today on the Provoke Coach podcast, Mr. and Coach James Stickney, longtime friend, coach, and mentor, still to this day after many, many years. Thank you so much for being our guest on today's podcast.
Well, I want to thank you, Clint, for having me on your show. Hopefully, whatever we discuss today, maybe it can help somebody make some decisions or make some positive change.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hopefully our discussion leads that way.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And really, as always, guys, the reason why we do this podcast is really to kind of spread, some provoking moments, that everybody has had, of course, as we go through. But there's only certain individuals that I've come across that have been able to actually pivot from these provoking moments in their lives that have really made a positive change. So, guys and gals, if you're listening, if you're watching, if you're tuning in, definitely share this message with somebody. Somebody needs to hear it. Coach, I'm going to kind of get right in and kind of let, everybody know that, hey, you were my coach for a long time in some multiple sports. You were, one of my favorite teachers, even though I didn't pay attention that much back then. I only paid attention when it was necessary. But, hey, truly, truly, you have been a mentor to me. You were a neighbor. You were a close friend to my family. We did grow up tight knit. I may have toilet papered your house a couple of times when I was a bad kid, but
maybe.
Look, I made up for it. I know that you definitely made up for it. And then we've been connecting over the years. Coach, just tell us a little bit about what you're doing now, for people that haven't maybe talked to you in a long time or kind of, misplaced, over the years.
Sure. Well, like you said, you were one of my students and athletes at Grant High School, where I taught for just about 30 years, retiring in 2012. And since that time, a lot has happened in my life. My wife and I moved. Some people might remember that. We moved to Vancouver, Washington for a number of years, where I coached football and track out there. And she had a job in education, mentoring teachers. I think she had something like 2,700 teachers that she had to mentor. But when grandbabies started to come into the picture, we moved back to Michigan. We now live in Grand Rapids. And I'm just down the street from Ottawa Hills High School, where I coach football. My second oldest son, Colin, is the athletic director and track coach at Wellspring Prep. And so I help in the spring. In fact, I just came back from track practice to do the show, but I help him with track and field. So I'm alive. Fantastic. And, still above ground and doing the things that I love. So
that's fantastic. How did you kind of feel about, your kids getting into coaching a little bit and in obviously being the athletic director? That's got to be something that, is a little bit different for you. How is that?
Well, I tell you, it excites me.
Yeah.
All of my sons were involved in athletics, largely because I was their ride to and from school, and so they had to hang around. But they all had successful high school careers. And Colin, the one who's the athletic director and coach, actually went on and participated in college athletics and was a 3-time All-American as a runner. And I think in taking over as a head coach, his first team, I think he probably was a little nervous. And so he asked me to jump on board. And for the most part, I'm there to give guidance or a hint, a helping hint to him on how, you know, to organize things and some things to do. And but you know, he's got a strong enough background that he really doesn't need the old guy's help. But I think he likes having me around, and I like to be around. So
Right.
and it keeps me young since I'm 60 plus years old.
Wow. Well, let's not age either one of us, not on this program, you know, by any means. So that's fantastic. So, you know, obviously I know, you know, you were, you know, local, and, you know, I had watched you over the years, even as I was growing into, you know, kind of adulthood. Why the move out west? I mean, what kind of provoked you guys to go way out there? Because that's really kind of when you and I connected again. I know that, you know, you were looking at maybe making a career change and stuff like that. So what provoked that?
Well, I had retired. My wife, who was also an educator, was looking to do something a little bit different than being a normal classroom teacher. And she had done some work with Michigan State and Central Michigan in their teacher mentoring programs. And why Vancouver? We actually had gone out there, she and I, on 2 different occasions when our son Colin ran in the cross-country national championships. And we really loved the area. It was just gorgeous.
Yeah.
And so one day, Michigan State called her up. And they said, "Hey, are you interested in a job out in Vancouver?"
Yeah.
Heck yeah. And it didn't take more than 15 minutes for us to decide. Let's go. Now the odd thing was, all right, I told her, you know, when we first came to Grant, she followed me. She left a career and followed me to Grant to go into teaching and coaching. I told her, I'm retired now. It's my turn to follow you. And so, I mean, we ended up selling. We sold everything. And the job that she took came 1 week prior to the football season. All right, so we took her out there. I asked her to find a place for us to live. I flew back to Michigan because we're a week away from the football season. I couldn't just leave a team that I, you know, was the head coach. I couldn't leave them a week before the season. So we had that 3 month separation. It was rough. When the season ended, all the kids understood what was happening, as did the coaches and so forth. But they understood that this change was going to be good for obviously my wife, and it was going to be a tremendous experience. She calls it a 3-year working vacation.
Yeah.
Because Vancouver, I mean, you've been out west. The West Coast is gorgeous. We were an hour from the Pacific, 20 minutes from the mountains. You could be in rainforests or on walking along some major fault line, you know, and feeling a little quake go or something. I mean, it was just gorgeous.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. You know, and it's funny that you say that, because I think, you know, couples go through that, you know, once or twice in their marriage, to where, you know, one person's chasing their dream, the other person kind of has to take a step back and kind of sacrifice a little bit. I know that my wife and I have done that over the years. And, you know, I mean, I had been extremely selfish at one point in my life. You know, it was just all, you know, grinding it out. And my wife was taking care of our home life. You know what I mean? But, you know, that's fantastic that at that time in your life, you could have been like, no way. Like, I just started coaching, you know, like, we're not going to, you know, but that's pretty powerful, you know, to be able to give that back. And then how long were you out there then? How long were you out
We
west?
were out there about, well, just over 3 years.
Okay, got it.
And like I say, we sold everything.
Right,
Our house, our property,
right,
furniture.
right.
And I thought it was going to be a very long stay out there, a
Yeah,
forever thing. But, um, you know, grandmothers and their grandbabies become
yeah,
very, very, well, that becomes very important. Maybe that
sure.
paternalistic, uh, you know, and to be very honest, I guess I wouldn't have it any other way. I just love my grandkids, and
Yeah,
so um, I think if I would have just been coming back every 3, 4 months for a quick little weekend visit, I'd be going nuts because
yeah,
they change so quickly.
yeah,
So
yeah, they
I'm
do.
glad
I
we
mean,
came back. I'm glad.
well, and what's amazing is that I don't think of your children as grown adults. I have this snapshot picture of them, rolling around on the mats, on the wrestling
Hmm.
mats, and just
Right.
being, snot-nosed little kids, good kids always, but it was just, it was quite interesting that that was the type of coaching that you've always done, and that family oriented, that humanistic approach to coaching. I mean, where did that come from? I mean, now if we were to go kind of back in time a little bit, like what got you into coaching and what got you into education? Because those are two things that are extremely powerful in the world. What got you to, do this?
Well, all of us, I think, at different, and you pointed this out a moment ago, in each of our lives, events occur, um, relationships pop up, and whether it's an event or a relationship or whatever, all of those can provoke change. When I was a high school senior, all right, I remember you as a high school senior, so um, I was very similar. Yes, I toilet papered people's houses and the whole bit. All right. And I may have skipped class now and then. All right. I wouldn't have told you that if you were still a student, but um, as a high school senior, I had absolutely no idea what I was going to do after high school. None whatsoever. Um, Michigan and the United States was starting to go through a mid to late 70s economic recession.
Hmm.
Jobs were not as plentiful. Gas prices were jumping from 27 cents a gallon to, through the roof.
Wow.
And during my senior year, my father passed away. And that forced me, I think, to wake up a little bit and grow up and make some decisions. Um, it provoked change personally,
Yeah.
um, where I had to start looking toward a real direction. And shortly then after, I ran into a little girl who I would later marry, who she was headed to college. She was already had been admitted to Michigan State. She had plans for her future. And I said, geez, I don't want to lose out on this. All right. This relationship that we were having was something I wanted to hang on to. And so that provoked a little change.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking 2 months after graduation. I took the ACT test, which we all had to back in the day take in order to
Yeah.
and apply to any college, and I applied. I mean,
Yep.
and luckily, I got accepted.
Yeah.
Um, and so now I'm going to college. I'm having to
Yeah.
pay for it because with my father having passed away, my mother she couldn't afford to cover that cost, and
Right.
so I had to make a decision. What am I going to do? I'm here in college, you know. Um, I always liked social studies. I always liked being physical. I always loved athletics. And how can you combine all those things? I had
Right.
had a really tremendous football coach named Dave Goodell at Ludington, where I graduated.
Hmm.
And I said, I can combine my love of social studies, physical education, and athletics. If I'm to do that, teaching and coaching is the way to
Yep.
go.
Yeah.
And, it worked out. Um,
Fantastic.
you know, I didn't want to mess up. And
Right.
since I was paying for it, I better do well.
Yeah, it's a different story when you have to grow up quickly, right? Like it's not as easy, as some people. It's like, take your wife as an example. Now she was determined and she knew exactly what she wanted.
Right.
I didn't know. I think as a split decision, I didn't want to go to college. And I'm like, you know what?
Mhm.
Let's go to college. Like, what do I got to do? I got to take a test. And I'm just like, wow, and then I got to college and it was a rude awakening because I had not built up the study skills, my reading. I had not, I was
Mhm.
not, never prepared for it. Right.
Mhm.
I
Right.
just, so it was a rude awakening. Well, that's fantastic. Now, where did the coaching come involved? I mean, you played sports. You said you had an influential kind of coach, your football
Mhm.
coach, but you kind of took it to the next level because you were doing competitive bodybuilding as well, right? In your
Right.
earlier
In
20s,
my
right?
earlier years.
Yeah.
The well, realistically, even beginning as doing your student teaching semester, I coached.
Yeah.
I just saw it as going hand in hand with teaching, and I don't think I could have just been a classroom teacher.
Yeah.
And when 3 o'clock hit, walk out the door and go home. I
Yeah.
think, in order to have a decent relationship with students through athletics, you can enhance that relationship. Um, I mean, this might sound odd, being an older fellow, but most of my friends, Facebook, whatever, are former students and former athletes.
Yeah.
I really don't stay in touch at all with the people I went to high school with. Um,
Right. Right.
you know, and every day I get a dozen or more notes from former students, former athletes, whether
Yeah.
they're here in Grand Rapids, Grant, even Ludington and Mason County Central, or even Vancouver. I've still got
Yeah.
several athletes from the Vancouver area playing college. They're in their last season
Hmm.
of college athletics. I've got one young fellow who just played on the team that won the NBA G League championship. And
Yeah.
so we've sent notes back and forth to each other. Um, you know, in order to teach anyone anything, there has to be a relationship of trust built up. And
Yeah.
I think the best way to do that, unless a kid just innately is excited about U.S. government or U.S. history or something,
Sure.
you create a relationship through athletics. And even if they're not great students, I found that most of the students that I had in class as well as on a sports team didn't want to mess up academically, so they did what they needed to do in class to keep their coach happy. I
Yeah.
was going to be
Well,
happy anyway.
And I think that what's funny is that I think you're absolutely right, because one of the questions that, as I'm kind of thinking about our conversation today, and I think I was in the shower this morning, I'm always rifling through all these questions, and one of the questions that kept sticking in my mind is that, do you think you would have been as good at your job one way or another, either whether it be a coach or a teacher, if you wouldn't have had that other discipline?
Well, like I said earlier, I don't think I could have been just simply a classroom teacher. While at Central Michigan University, I actually had to petition the School of Ed because my wife and I were married following our sophomore year of college. Not that we had to, all right, but we were married. She transferred from Michigan State to Central and so forth. But I had to make a decision whether to focus on academics and go to law school. All right. Most of my professors were urging me to go that direction.
Sure.
But in order to decide whether to go that direction or go into education and coaching, I had to petition the School of Education to allow me to do my student teaching the first semester of my junior year. Now, most people do their student teaching the last semester of their senior year.
Right.
I'm doing it the first semester of my junior year to find out, one, if I'm any good at it. All right.
Sure.
Right. Am I going to be okay in the classroom? Because I'll tell you, getting up in front of 30 kids, I don't care how old or young they are. It's
right.
It's an emotional thing. And can I combine teaching and coaching and do both well enough where I'm satisfied or where I'm comfortable or feeling good about what I'm doing? Because the last thing I as a teacher or a coach is to shortchange the kids in the classroom or the kids on the playing field or the mat or whatever. I never wanted to shortchange anybody. My wife and my kids will tell you that 90-hour work weeks were the norm for me. I mean, I was opening up the weight room at 6:30 in the morning and leaving the high school following practices or sporting event. If it was a 12-hour day, that was a light day for me. But 90-hour work weeks were, I mean, I spent most of Sundays at the school preparing. So I don't know if, I can't believe that I'd have been really any good or as good, if I was good at all, if I just taught in the classroom. Or if I'd be satisfied if I had gone to law school. I don't know. But I'm very happy with the way things have gone. I don't think I would want to have done anything differently.
Right. Well, and it's powerful what you said, because you don't want to shortchange, I mean, I've seen that with coaches. I've seen that with teachers. I've seen that, people that, that try both, and that one of them is always, and I hate to say it, the redheaded stepchild, or one of them is always the thing that you don't like to do most. In business, it's very similar as well. In business, if you really, really like sales, but you don't like the service aspect of it, then you're going to spend all your time selling, and then your service is going to go by the wayside, right? It's just, I mean, these things correlate, so I'm glad that you brought that up. You didn't want to shortchange or sacrifice. And what's important is that that's our youth. What's important is that is the leaders of the world that we're creating right now. So I'm definitely glad that you took that route, especially rather than law. I'm sure you could have been great you know, but, you know, look how many more lives, you know, that, you know, you were able to impact. You know, I kind of want to talk about something though, really quick, is that I think a lot of people out there are going through definitely some difficult times, and definitely we're in some challenging times. I want to kind of talk about the current situation that we're all in right now. And I guess the first question is, you know, how has coaching changed in the world that we live in right now, with all the restrictions that we have and the nasty things that are going on in the world? You know, you've seen it from the best times, right, to the hard times, to the good times, but now to some challenging times. You know, how have things changed?
Well, the interesting thing is, I don't know if per se coaching, you know, the idea of coaching a kid or a player or an athlete hasn't changed. However, the environment or the administrative environment surrounding coaching today's athletes have changed because of the COVID situation.
Sure.
Track and field, for instance, where we had to go through all the COVID restrictions today with the athletes.
Yeah.
You know, first of all, we started out in the gym. You're going to be 6 feet apart from any other person. You're going to have your mask on. The only time that mask can come on, all right, is if you are actively participating in your event. All right. So at practice, boom, that mask is on. Before, let's say you're a thrower.
Yeah.
When you step into the circle to throw a shot or a disc or whatever, the mask can come off. But immediately following your throw, the mask has to go on. A teammate can't go and retrieve that shot or that discus for you. All right. You have to retrieve it. And if someone else touches it, it all has to be sanitized. You can't share the shots. You can't share the disc with another athlete. Relay batons. Athletes are going to be allowed to wear gloves, and that baton has to be sanitized before and after use.
Oh,
all right.
No.
So
yeah,
I don't know what kind of gloves. If we're going to use receiver gloves, that baton will never fall. You know,
right.
Even the starting blocks. One person in practice, boom, they leave the starting block. That blocks have to be sanitized before the next person can get into the blocks.
Right.
So that administrative bit has changed. And I think a number of athletes probably, whether it's their parents or whatever, they're hesitant to put the kids into a potential environment or an environment that potentially could lead to an illness. And COVID is not just, I mean, it's devastating. I don't know if you've talked to one of your cousins lately. He lives in San Francisco. He and his wife.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They've got heart and lung problems as well as brain fog coming out of it. I mean, it's a devastating illness. And I'm certain there are athletes who would be participating who aren't. And wrestling this year, you would have been frustrated.
Wow. Oh, yes.
If the person you wrestle with every day, all right, because you couldn't just wrestle with 5 or 6 different guys on the mat.
Yeah.
You would be given a partner. You wrestle with that partner in practice. If that partner comes down with COVID or someone in his family, and so he's got to be quarantined, you also had to be quarantined.
Wow.
So you couldn't wrestle. So there's a lot of frustration. Administrative end, it's been a struggle, and I know some coaches have gotten out of the business because of it.
I bet. I bet.
Yeah.
I bet.
So,
I mean, just being in the fitness industry for many, many years and really
right.
having a lot of contacts that are still in the fitness industry, a lot of them are not there anymore. You know, a lot of
Mhm.
companies, a lot of business owners, you know, it really put a damper on things that, wow, are just everyday need to haves in our lives, and our kids need to have it. I mean, you can tell a huge
Mhm.
difference, you know, in the younger adults, and I mean, in the younger kids. My daughter's 11, or going on 11,
Right.
and you know, there's an element of fear, I think, that's throughout
Mhm.
the years. You know, that they get hesitant to do things, and I've even noticed, and you know, maybe you've experienced this a little bit as well, is that has sportsmanship changed due to all this? Because I feel like I'm doing less handshakes, more wannabe fist bumps from across the way, to where there's something missing there.
Yeah. Again, part of the rules for track and field is, and I'll mention wrestling as well. The idea of at the end of a wrestling match, the handshake, which I thought was the greatest sign of sportsmanship. I
Yeah.
mean, two people just went at it for
Right.
the toughest 6 minutes in athletics,
Yeah.
and someone's going to come out a winner. And you shook hands at the end of it, maybe even embraced.
Yeah.
Can't do that anymore.
Right.
You can't even fist bump or give a forearm. It's basically that. You
Yeah.
don't go over to the opposing coach and shake hands.
Right.
Um, and always been a coach who, again, with the idea of relationships with kids, you know, whether it was a girl, guy, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna have a conversation with them and pull them in close. Um,
Yeah.
you can't do that, and
Yeah.
because there are times that an athlete needs to have someone talking in their ear directly to them instead of 3, 4, 5 feet apart talking at them.
Yes.
And that can't be done or shouldn't
Right.
be done. I'm not going to
Right.
say that
Right.
it doesn't happen, but because I'm sure it does. Um, and I don't know if you've ever tried to work out while wearing a mask. I'm sure you have.
Oh
It's
yeah.
not very easy.
Yeah.
And for football, uh, I mean, we got everybody the same looking mask, that
Yeah.
kind of thing, but they're not going to stay up, you
Right.
know. Um,
Well, and it's real tough, and I hope that, you know, I mean, look, you know, we all hope it'll be better a lot sooner, right?
oh
And
yeah.
moving in the right direction. You know, I want to, you know, kind of fast forward a little bit. You know, when, you know, you kind of came back, right, from being out in Washington. You know, here we
Mhm.
got grandkids now. You know, what happened since then? You know, I mean, what kind of led you right up until now? I mean, for those of you that don't know, I mean, you got some guitars there that are pretty sweet. You know, definitely not the stick that, you know, a lot of us remember. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Um, First, I'm a better guitar collector than I am a player, but I retired not really because I wanted to at the time. I mean, I was only, I think, 53 years old at the time, and but I retired because of medical reasons, and largely doctors didn't know what was wrong with me. After moving out west, I actually read an article about Michigan and Lyme disease, and in that article it listed all these symptoms, and I put little check marks next to the symptoms. There were about 25 or 30, and I had almost all of them. So I asked my doctors out west, um, could I get tested? And lo and behold, um, I tested positive 5 different times so far for uh, Lyme disease and numerous co-infections. And by the time that they detected all of this, it was too late to just kill the bacteria in my system. I had too much of the bacteria, and so it's going to progressively attack different parts of my body, including my brain. And so doctors suggested that I learn a different language. And I really didn't want to learn Spanish or French or German. Polynesian was kind of interesting to me, right? A lot of Polynesians out west, and I loved working with them on the athletic field. But music's always been an interest at a distance for me, all right? And I said, you know what? The left hand has to do something different than the right hand, and the brain's got to tell them both what to do at different times. You have to keep rhythm. And so the language that I chose to learn is music, and that does involve reading music, understanding all the individual notes and all the symbols and so forth. And that's really meant to keep my brain active so that it doesn't deteriorate as quickly. But so one of the great calming things, get the guitars out. Sometimes I'll plug in the electric guitars, turn up the amps, and for
Nice.
my wife or my neighbors to yell at me. But I have a lot of fun, and it's okay. I'll take an acoustic guitar outside, and I'll play, and sometimes the neighbors will sit and listen. My wife and I traveled to New Zealand a year or so ago, and I took an acoustic with me, and at different places I'd sit outside and I'm just strumming and just playing around. People would stop and listen, and I felt good, and so I just, it's something new, all right, because I can't be as physically active as I once was. The Lyme disease doesn't permit it, my joints, and anyway, don't want to know, you just have to adapt. And so, each of us forever is changing. And, as events or changes take place, they provoke other changes. And so, yes, now I'm that rock star. And instead of that, instead of that coaching phenom or whatever.
Right. Well, and do you think that, a lot of people pick up on things, as they retire, they start to do other things, did you, were you ever thinking about at one time, like playing a musical instrument or really getting into singing and playing the guitar and strumming along? Was that anything that crossed your path at all, or?
To be very honest, no. Probably when I was like in fourth or fifth grade, I thought about, playing some drums, but I have no rhythm.
Right.
My uncle tried to, because he's a drummer still, and he's, gosh, I don't know, he's probably 70 now. And he tried to work with me a little bit, but he just shook his head and walked away. So no, I set music aside a long time ago. But for some reason, the gym that I was going to in Vancouver, I had to walk past a music store on my way home. And I just one day just walked in, and I looked around, and when I walked out, I got home and I said to my wife, "This is what I'm going to do. What do you think?" Sure enough. And so
nice.
I did it, or I'm doing it.
Right.
And it's okay. It's okay.
That's fantastic because you open up parts of your brain, right, that you've never used before, right? And that's something
Right.
like you've used a super amount of your brain coaching and strategy and politics and economics and numbers, to where you're talking about a totally different thing, right? There's really no similarities, in my opinion,
Oh,
right? I
no,
mean, maybe there is
no.
that I don't know of. Um,
Um,
but how much
I
different
don't
is it?
think there's any similarities at all
Right.
between playing music and getting out on a field or a mat or a classroom and doing what I did. There's nothing similar. And I'll tell you, I was a whole lot more confident and competent in the classroom, on a mat
Yeah.
or the field or whatever, than I am with music. But I still do it and I enjoy it. My wife hasn't, left me.
Well, she's a groupie now, right? I mean, that's the idea. When you guys go out and play, she's got to be your groupie. That's just fantastic.
There you
Well,
go. I never thought
and what
about
do
it like
you?
that. I'm kind of groupie.
It, yeah, you got a groupie. Um,
When I work security for concerts and stuff
yeah,
back in the 90s and early 2000s, I saw a lot of groupies,
yeah,
and I don't mind it if she's my groupie. All right.
that's awesome. That's fantastic. Well, and I guess, it's helped you out in a lot of other ways as well, I would imagine, not only just for a hobby, but I mean, you've built up a tolerance now to be able to read music. I mean, that's something that's extremely hard to do, right? You can't, I mean, anybody can kind of pick up, a musical instrument and play a couple keys or a couple chords or whatnot. But to
Mhm.
actually read music, I mean,
Right.
that's got to be pretty challenging, is it not? Or
Oh, yeah. A lot of people read what's called tablature. It'll, show you you're going to play an A chord or a
yeah,
C or a D, whatever. Well, now if you're looking at the individual music notes, that's totally different. And I'm doing that instead of just reading tablature so that the brain kicks in.
yeah,
Um, and a lot of people, I mean, Eddie Van Halen couldn't read music, all right,
right,
but he could play.
right.
Um, I can read music, but I can't really play. But we're working at it,
Yeah,
and
that's
and
awesome.
I'm building up the calluses on my hand or my fingertips and so forth. And
Right.
like I say, I'm having fun, and I don't really think I'll be playing in front of large crowds, but um, you know,
Well, I mean, you
I'm
got a
not
nice little
ready
setup.
to go
I'm
that direction.
maybe a YouTube channel or something like that to where we can all tune in and listen to you start playing. Yeah, we
Sure.
could get that arranged, right?
Well, maybe we could, but we won't.
Right.
I
Gotcha.
remember. I remember the first time I had a former student um, who was just a kid in the back of my classroom. He also wrestled and such, but he's a kid in the back of the classroom who put headphones in, earbuds or whatever they were called. Um, this was at Mason County Central when I was doing my student teaching. So we're in 1980. All right.
Wow.
It's a while ago. All right. And, he introduced me to AC/DC on a little cassette and so forth. Um, and I never thought much about it. He didn't play an instrument, didn't do anything. But later on, I discovered he was making a fortune. Maynard Keenan,
Oh yeah.
the front man for Tool and the Perfect Circle.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Here he is. Let's call him a rock star. I never would have imagined that.
Right.
So obviously something motivated him along a direction.
Yeah.
Later in life, because he didn't come out of high school being a rock star, and went into the military
Right.
afterwards. And so, things happen in your life that kind of force a change.
Yeah.
So you never
They,
know when they're gonna hit you upside the head, you know. But if you find
well,
success doing something,
right.
and as a coach, success, I think, can be measured in a number of different ways. A lot of people look at a coach and they look at the one-loss record. That never was as important to me. Obviously, you want to win games or win wrestling matches or whatever, but it wasn't as important as building a kid up, giving him an opportunity to find success, because that kid down the road could end up, being your doctor or your lawyer or the guy who sells you your home or whatever. Because the kids in your classroom or on your team are going to be somebody more than just a student or an athlete someday. And so I always wanted to give kids an opportunity. Uh, the bench player is I think sometimes the most important, or a forgotten important part of any team, because it's that kid who's going to be holding the dummy or being the scout team kid who's going to get beaten up every day and not get any applause for what they're doing, but obviously they're there because they enjoy what they're doing. They're working their off, maybe to become a starter or something, but they're getting something positive out of the
Yeah.
experience, and that's really what I worked toward in my mind of what success was. Yeah, I won a lot of games and I won some awards. Actually, I didn't do any of it. It was the players. Um, you know, I'm I don't know. I just love the fact that kids like you um, have done so well for themselves and for their families. Um, it's I just did a little happy birthday text to a young gal who wasn't an athlete, but she loved social studies and now is a lawyer and
Right.
fantastic. So did a
Well,
happy birthday
you
thing
never
to
know who's listening.
what's that?
You never know who's listening, right? You never know who you're influencing. You never know who you're coaching, even if you don't even know you're coaching them, right? Or you don't even know
Right.
the impact or the influence that you're having on that individual. Like you said, the bench player, that play is so critical. I remember, and even in wrestling, especially, like not everybody wrestles varsity. As a matter of
Right.
fact, there might be two, three other people that you had to fight it out for, to actually get that spot every single
Mm-hmm.
week. Right. But
Right.
those players were critical because they were almost more critical than the actual people that were going out and sometimes winning the matches, because they would
Right.
never be conditioned that way. They would never be in that type of shape. They would never make it to their peak potential without that other
Mm-hmm.
person pushing them and driving them, not only from coaching essentially, but also from those players as well. So that's an awesome impact that you've had. And I guess, Coach, really kind of a last question, kind of for you. I mean, if you could give any advice, whether it's to, teachers, whether it's to coaches, whether it's to players, or really anybody out there that's listening, I mean, what is one good nugget that they can kind of take home with them and get your wisdom from all these years of all the success you've had and all the influence that you've had?
Well, I just one nugget, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I've coached I think this is my 42nd or 43rd year of coaching football. I coached, I think this is 37 or 38 years of coaching track, and I think it was 23 years of coaching wrestling. So 100 and, I don't know, roughly 110 teams I've coached. I'm going to, this might sound odd, but as a coach or someone in business or whatever, you want to surround yourself with people who are better than you. All right. The best teams, I mean, I'm not going to ever say I was the best wrestling coach or best football coach, but if I hire or have next to me coaches who are better than me, then, and you listen to them and you take their advice and let them coach, that works to the benefit of everyone. There are a lot of coaches out there who become intimidated if their assistants or other people know more than them. And I learned we all learned from a mentor. Dave Woodcock, Woody, was a phenomenal Hall of Fame coach at, I don't know, about 20 different schools, won 200 and some odd games, a head coach. But Dave Woodcock was willing to sign on as an assistant coach for me and coach with me. And by adding that person to an already good staff, the teams that I coached in Grant and other places became that much better. And through his advice and through all the years, I think if you earn the trust of your players, earn the trust of your assistant coaches, be willing to listen to the players as well as coaches around you, listen to them, take their advice, or at least acknowledge their advice and so forth. That's going to help everyone in the long run. And in doing so, build up the entire team and everyone around you. No assistant coach ever wants to have their voice fall on deaf ears. No player wants to just be on a team and be, have no chance, no opportunity
Right.
to make a difference. You said it. If your wrestling partner was not willing to bust his butt in order to bust your butt, how good would you have become? The scout team player is it. And then have fun. Have fun doing it all. My teams, my wrestling teams, football teams, never did I walk away frustrated and upset. I enjoyed every minute. I still enjoy every minute of coaching. The kids I'm working with right now are nothing like the kids I had in Grant. I mean, this is inner city Grand Rapids. This is a lot of gang activity, a lot of kids without full parental support, some kids who live on the streets and so forth. But by putting your arm around them, earning their trust, showing that you care, that you're willing to listen to them, it's going to lead to success for everyone involved. Because down the road might be that police officer who pulls you over for speeding, might let you go. Not that I've had that happen.
Right.
Yes, I have. All right. So it might be the doctor out there, or the nurse, or whomever.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of students become doctors, nurses, lawyers. I got a congressman even. You know, it's you know, I don't know, kids who have made it in professional baseball, basketball, the NFL, and so forth. And you know, every one of them, regardless of
Yeah.
whether they were a top athlete or the bench player, I love them all, and I'm willing. You know, I've always been willing to help them out.
Well, and you said something that was pretty, and not, you know, necessarily different than what you hear, but different than what's actually being done, right? So every coach, every teacher, oh yeah, guys, you know, we want to win, let's all work together. But you're right. I think that just like in business, people get intimidated when somebody is sharper than them or they know more than them, and the ego gets in the way. And when your ego gets in the way, it's like your brain shuts off, right? It's like the analogy I used with wrestling the other day is that, you know, look, I remember getting upset, right? And then when I started getting upset in wrestling, your brain turns off. Well, then that means you're not using your brain, right? So now you're going to lose. And I think that it's very powerful what you said, is that you want to surround yourself with people that are better than you. So that way, not only does it lift you up, but it lifts the entire team up. And you want to get those players involved that are an intricate part of that team's success, that, you know, yeah, maybe they might not get all the praise and the accolades, right? But they are a part of something that's greater, you know, than themselves. So, I mean, that's such a powerful message, man. That's awesome. No wonder why I had you on here. Because you are exactly the same as what you were. I just didn't appreciate it back then. Right?
Well,
I just didn't appreciate it at all.
I see that you've grown up a whole lot since high school.
Right.
All right. But I tell you, you know, when I had you, you know, as a wrestler, you were just a heavily muscled young man, and you were intimidating to opposing wrestlers. All right, just the sight of you, and I always knew that when we sent you out on the mat, you were going to give your opponent one heck of a battle, but you're going to give your team what it needed. All right, a chance to win, to gain those points, and so forth. I always had confidence in that, and I was so excited a few years back when I learned what you were doing in the business world, and when you know, we met most recently a couple months ago at an unfortunate situation. You know, a funeral of for me, a former athlete and so forth, for you, a relative. But it was great to see you then, and a huge surprise when you contacted me about doing this. I don't know. Hopefully, I don't know.
It was fantastic.
Help things out. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, everybody needs to, you know, hear stories like what you told us today, Stick, because I think that, you know, there's somebody out there that's listening that might not know what they need to do. You know, they might be in the same position that you were right before college, and, you know, you chased your dream girl and said, wow, I better get my shit together and get this thing right. You know, I mean, there's all sorts of provoking moments that you shared tonight that I really appreciate. And I can't wait to have you on again. I can't wait to have you on and maybe, you know, hear a little tune or anything like that. That might be a little bit later on some other episodes.
Yeah, I don't know about hearing that tune, but you know, I was nervous as can be, not about talking with you, but doing this. You know, I'm an old fart, and I'm not used to, I don't know, I just was nervous.
Yeah.
I'm not nervous now. I could
Yeah. Well,
continue
that's
talking
great.
for another hour or so.
Oh,
You
I
know,
could too. Oh, I could too, for sure. And, look, this definitely won't be the last time. We'll get together on maybe some more specific topics, and, maybe we can help
Sure.
out some people, in the future as well. But hang around for a bit. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go ahead and end tonight's call of our live Provoke Coach podcast. Thank you so much. If you liked everything, go ahead and subscribe. You can go to iTunes. You can go on Spotify. There's about 6 other platforms that we're going to download everything onto. We are also on YouTube under Provoke Coach. So definitely go check it out there. And again, if you liked it, share it. Somebody needs to hear the provoking stories and the message from Coach tonight. It's been a pleasure. It really, truly has. And we will talk to everybody soon.